Why is it that so many men today feel lost, controlled, or even betrayed when it comes to women? Why do the same mistakes repeat across centuries, as if men never learn? The problem isn't love itself. It's the illusions, the blind desires, and the hidden struggles of power that men refuse to see. In this message, you're going to discover a truth so uncomfortable, so controversial, that most people would rather ignore it than face it. And if you want clarity, if you want strength, and if you want to stop being deceived by illusions, then this is a truth you must hear. From the very beginning of human history, men have been drawn not only to the physical presence of women, but also to the idea of them, to the vision that exists in their imagination rather than in reality. The illusion of idealization is one of the most destructive forces in the life of a man, for it convinces him that what he sees in a woman is the complete truth, when in fact it is only a reflection of his own longing. He does not fall in love with the woman herself. He falls in love with the image he has painted of her in his mind. He attributes to her virtues that may not exist, purity that may not be real, wisdom that is often absent, and a loyalty that is untested. This is not love. It is projection, and projection is dangerous because it blinds a man from truth and sets him up for inevitable disappointment. Men who live in this illusion often mistake infatuation for destiny. They look at a woman and tell themselves she is different from all others, that she is perfect in ways no one else can be. But what they are really seeing is the reflection of their own unfulfilled desires. The lonely man imagines her as his salvation. The insecure man imagines her as his validation. The restless man imagines her as his peace. Yet when the image fades, when time reveals her flaws, or when reality collides with fantasy, the man feels betrayed. He cries out in anger, not realizing it was never she who betrayed him. It was his own illusions. The illusion of idealization enslaves men in subtle ways. They may ignore red flags, excuses, and obvious contradictions in a woman's character simply because they are unwilling to shatter the dream they have built. The more deeply he clings to this dream, the more he refuses to see reality. He convinces himself that if she lies, it is because she was forced to. If she withdraws, it is because she is tired. If she disrespects him, it is because she did not mean it. The man will twist reality into any shape necessary to keep his fantasy alive. And in doing so, he does not protect her, he destroys himself. What men often forget is that women, like men, are complex creatures filled with contradictions, flaws, and selfish desires. To place them on a pedestal is not to love them, but to strip them of their humanity. To idealize a woman is to turn her into a goddess, and when she inevitably fails to live up to that divine image, resentment takes its place. The same man who once adored her will now despise her. The same hands that once lifted her up will now push her away. The cycle repeats endlessly. Men worship, then men curse. Men idealize, then men condemn. And through it all, they fail to see that the error was never in her. It was in their blindness. This illusion is most dangerous because it convinces a man to build his entire life around it. He may sacrifice his ambitions, his principles, even his dignity, all for the sake of keeping his ideal intact. He will believe he has found the source of his happiness in her, and so he neglects himself. He forgets that happiness must be forged within, not borrowed from another. When she changes, when she withdraws, when she no longer plays the role he imagined, his world collapses. A man who has invested his entire existence into an illusion finds himself with nothing when the illusion disappears. To understand the nature of this problem is to see how men create their own misery. They do not suffer because women deceive them. They suffer because they deceive themselves. They do not collapse because love is inherently cruel. They collapse because they built their love on a foundation of lies. They could not distinguish between reality and fantasy, between a living person and an imagined goddess. This blindness is what leads men into bitterness, regret, and even hatred. A man must confront the truth. To idealize is to weaken himself. When he refuses to see a woman as she is, with all her flaws and all her humanity, he puts himself in chains. And when the chains tighten, when the illusion finally breaks, he finds himself helpless, broken, and resentful. To avoid this fate, he must train his eyes to see clearly, to pierce through appearances, and to accept that no woman can live up to the fantasy he projects. Only then can he begin to form relationships not out of illusion, but out of understanding, where respect is not born from worship, but from clarity. Would you like me to now expand Keynote 2 into another 700-word segment in the same sharp Schopenhauer style tone? Or should I continue only after you review this first expansion? Every relationship between man and woman carries within it an unspoken struggle, a silent battlefield where instincts clash and power is continuously negotiated. Men who believe that love is only tenderness and harmony deceive themselves, for beneath the surface lies a conflict of interests as old as humanity itself. The bond between the sexes is not a utopia of mutual understanding, but a theater of competition, where each pursues aims that often contradict the other. To ignore this is to live blindfolded, and blindness in such matters is always costly. At the core of this struggle lies nature itself. The man seeks to satisfy his desire, while the woman seeks security for herself and her offspring. His instinct drives him to spread his strength outward, to conquer, to claim. Her instinct pushes her to measure, to select, to restrain. Each sees the other not simply as a partner, but as a means to fulfill a deeper instinct. The man believes he is pursuing pleasure or love, yet in truth he is driven by forces far older than reason. The woman believes she is yielding for affection, yet her choices are often guided by calculation, a weighing of survival, comfort, and power. Neither can escape these instincts, and together they form a battlefield masked by the language of romance. Men often walk into this battlefield unprepared, imagining themselves warriors of passion, when in reality they are captives of desire. They see beauty, they are intoxicated, and in their intoxication they surrender the higher ground. The woman, more aware of her leverage than she lets on, learns to wield her allure as a weapon. She need not raise her voice or strike with force. Her silence, her withdrawal, her approval withheld at the right moment is often enough to bend the man's will. In this way, the relationship becomes a contest of control, where power does not always come from strength, but from the ability to influence the other's emotions. This struggle is not always loud or violent. Most often it is subtle. It lives in the compromises men make to win favor, in the sacrifices they disguise as devotion, in the way they mold themselves to please rather than to remain true to their own nature. A man thinks he is choosing. In truth, he is being led. He thinks he is in control. In reality, he is already governed by the approval or disapproval of the woman. He confuses conquest with submission, not realizing that his surrender has already begun. The dynamic is further complicated by society, which disguises this battle with sweet words. Men are told to be noble, to give without condition, to see women as delicate flowers that must be endlessly tended. Yet beneath this facade, the primal game persists. It does not vanish simply because culture demands politeness. The struggle remains, and the man who does not see it becomes its victim. He gives endlessly, hoping that devotion will earn him respect, only to find that what is given too easily is soon taken for granted. Respect is born not of submission but of resistance, not a blind giving but of measured strength. The woman, on her side, knows that her influence weakens when she is too easily conquered. She understands that power lies not only in beauty but in distance, in withholding, in the art of appearing unattainable. This instinctive knowledge makes her a natural strategist, while the man, lost in desire, often forgets strategy entirely. He mistakes his passion for strength, when in truth passion makes him weak. He loses himself in longing, and in that loss he places the reins of power into her hands. This is the essence of the battle. One side fights with passion, the other with calculation. One side burns quickly, the other waits patiently, and patience often triumphs over fire. The man who fails to see this dynamic condemns himself to manipulation, for he will always act first, always reveal his weakness, always be the one who gives away his advantage. Only the man who sees through the veil, who recognizes the eternal contest of instincts, can step onto this battlefield with clarity. To acknowledge the battle of instincts is not to despise women nor to flee from them. It is simply to recognize that what appears as harmony is in truth a negotiation of power, and that those who do not understand this negotiation will always find themselves on the losing end. The man who lives under the illusion of pure harmony will wake one day to realize that every smile, every word, every silence carried meaning he never considered. He will see that he was not simply loved, but managed, not simply adored, but measured. The recognition may come too late, But the lesson remains: wherever desire exists, so does the battle of power. Desire has always been the most powerful force that enslaves men, yet it is the one they most willingly submit to. When a man allows himself to be ruled by attraction without understanding, he sacrifices his freedom with his own hands. Blind desire is not love, nor is it even true passion. It is a fever that clouds judgment, weakens will, and pushes a man into decisions that his rational self would never accept. In this state, he gives without measure, he sacrifices without question, and he binds his life to something fleeting. What he believes to be strength is in fact surrender, for nothing weakens a man more than to place his future at the mercy of uncontrollable longing. Blind desire deceives because it disguises itself as destiny. The man tells himself he has finally found the one who will complete him, who will bring him peace and meaning. In truth, he is a prisoner of his own biology, a servant to the most primitive instinct. He interprets the fire in his chest as something divine, as if the universe itself had conspired to unite him with this one person. Yet what he feels is nothing more than nature's trick, designed not for his happiness but for reproduction. The man believes he is choosing freely, but he is in chains from the moment desire takes hold. The cost of blind desire is measured not only in wasted emotions, but in wasted lives. Men have abandoned their principles, their ambitions, even their honor, all in the pursuit of women who had no intention of giving them what they sought. Entire fortunes have been spent in the name of seduction. Promising futures have been thrown away for a fleeting embrace. Empires have crumbled because kings could not resist the pull of passion. History itself testifies that when men allow themselves to be ruled by desire, they invite ruin. It is a cycle that repeats endlessly, for each man believes himself immune, until he too is caught in the snare. The greatest tragedy is not that men desire women, but that they do so blindly, without discipline or awareness. A man who cannot master his desire is mastered by it. He imagines himself powerful because he pursues, yet he is already conquered. He may believe he is the hunter, but in reality, he is the prey. Every decision he makes, every promise he utters, every coin he spends is guided not by his reason but by his fevered craving. He is no longer an individual. He is a puppet, and the strings are pulled by forces he refuses to acknowledge. Blind desire also poisons the relationship it creates. When a man pursues out of sheer compulsion, he places the weight of his happiness entirely on the woman he desires. He expects her to fulfill his emptiness, to bring him joy, to justify his sacrifices. But no person can carry such a burden. Inevitably, she will fail to satisfy the endless hunger of a man who does not know himself. What follows is resentment, bitterness, and despair. The very passion that drew him to her transforms into hatred, for he believes she betrayed him, when in truth he betrayed himself by building his life on a foundation of fire. The man enslaved by blind desire also loses his dignity. He becomes willing to accept treatment he would never tolerate in any other part of his life. He tolerates disrespect, excuses lies, and accepts humiliation, all because his hunger is stronger than his pride. He becomes a beggar at the door of affection, waiting for crumbs of attention and convincing himself that this degradation is worth it. His sense of self shrinks, his strength evaporates, and his entire existence becomes centered around satisfying a longing that never truly ends. There is a deeper cost as well, the cost of time. A man can regain lost money, he can rebuild lost status, but he can never reclaim wasted years. Blind desire steals not only his dignity and freedom, but the one resource that never returns. Years are poured into relationships that were doomed from the beginning, into women who never cared, into pursuits that were never real. When he finally awakens, it is often too late. He looks back and sees that his youth, his opportunities, and his energy were consumed by illusions. The cruel irony is that the satisfaction of desire is always fleeting. The passion that once consumed him fades the moment it is fulfilled, and yet the damage remains. He may wake up beside the very woman he thought would save him and feel only emptiness. The fire that once burned so brightly now leaves ashes, and he realizes that what he surrendered for that fire was infinitely greater than what he gained. This realization, however, comes when the cost has already been paid. Blind desire is the most expensive weakness a man can carry, demands payment in freedom, dignity, wealth, and time. It robs him of his strength and leaves him hollow. And yet, Countless men choose this path willingly, unable to distinguish between the illusion of passion and the reality of its consequences. A man who builds his worth on the shifting ground of another's affection condemns himself to weakness. When his sense of self depends on the approval, attention, or affection of a woman, he has already surrendered his freedom. He no longer stands as an individual with his own weight. He exists only as a reflection of what she gives or withholds. This dependency is subtle at first. It hides behind gestures of love, the desire to please, or the willingness to sacrifice. But over time, it reveals itself as chains that grow tighter the more he relies on her for his happiness. Dependency creates an imbalance of power. The man who depends on her affection fears its loss more than anything else. And so he becomes cautious, hesitant, and submissive. He begins to shape his behavior not according to his own convictions, but according to what will preserve her approval. He measures his words, bends his principles, and silences his instincts, all for the sake of avoiding her withdrawal. In this way, he trades authenticity for survival. What survives is not a man, it is a shadow of one. This dependency also breeds anxiety, for what is external is always unstable. A woman's emotions shift like the seasons. Her attention can turn from warm to cold without warning. To tie one's sense of worth to something so volatile is to invite constant insecurity. The dependent man lives in fear of losing her, fear of displeasing her, fear of being abandoned. Even when he has her affection, he cannot rest, for he knows it could vanish tomorrow. His entire being becomes a struggle to maintain what cannot be controlled. The cost of this dependency is dignity. A man who once carried himself with strength and independence begins to bow, to beg, to compromise in ways he never imagined possible. He convinces himself that love requires this, that devotion justifies self-erasure. But what he calls devotion is often desperation, and what he calls sacrifice is the slow destruction of his own spirit. Each time he betrays his own values for the sake of her approval, he digs himself deeper into the pit of dependency. The dependent man also becomes blind. He cannot see the truth of the woman before him because his need clouds his vision. If she disrespects him, he excuses it. If she withdraws, he blames himself. If she manipulates, he calls it love. His fear of losing her is so great that he refuses to acknowledge reality. In this blindness, he gives her more power than she ever asked for. She becomes the judge of his worth, the master of his emotions, the ruler of his soul. Whether she intends to wield this power or not, the man has placed it in her hands. Dependency weakens not only the man but the relationship itself. Genuine respect cannot grow where one party fears the other. A woman cannot admire a man who lives beneath her approval. She may enjoy the control for a time, but eventually contempt replaces affection. Respect comes from strength, and strength is incompatible with dependency. The man believes his obedience will keep her close, but in reality, it drives her further away. For no one can truly value what is too easily possessed. There is a deeper tragedy in dependency. It robs a man of his potential. A man consumed by the need for approval spends his energy chasing stability where it cannot exist. He loses focus on his ambitions, his growth, and his purpose. His life begins to revolve around maintaining her affection, as if nothing else holds meaning. In this state, his power, creativity, and vision wither away. He forgets that his worth is not something given to him by another, but something he must forge through strength and independence. The brutal truth is that dependency makes a man forget who he is. He no longer acts from his own will but from the fear of rejection. He no longer speaks his truth, but only what he thinks will preserve his place beside her. He no longer lives as a man, but as a servant to an unstable source of validation. This state is not love, nor is it respect. It is imprisonment, and the prisoner has built his own cage. The truth that has been revealed throughout this message is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Illusions blind men into creating fantasies that never existed. Instincts clash in silent battles of power that most refuse to acknowledge. Blind desire enslaves men in chains that they forge with their own hands. Dependency robs them of freedom, dignity, and even the memory of who they once were. These forces combine to weaken men, to strip them of clarity, and to reduce their strength to dust before they even realize what has happened. But the lesson hidden within this painful reality is that awareness is power. The man who sees through the illusions of idealization who recognizes the eternal struggle of instincts, who disciplines his desires, who refuses to let his worth depend on anyone else, becomes untouchable. He is no longer ruled by longing, no longer controlled by fear, no longer weakened by the shifting tides of approval. He stands as his own foundation, free to choose, free to give, and free to walk away. The controversial message left here is not meant to diminish women, nor to fill men with bitterness, but to awaken them from the sleep of self-deception. For only when a man tears off the veil of illusions can he begin to live with strength. Only when he refuses to be a servant to desire or dependency can he command respect. Only when he accepts the brutal truths of human nature can he rise above them. This is the path that separates the weak from the strong, the blind from the awake, and the enslaved from the free.